but particularly we've recognized it with our beneficiaries. And we've attempted to fix some of the issues in the past, but we also know that those darn budget rules get in the way, and that makes it really challenging, I think, to try and address it, certainly in total. In 2009, this committee addressed a portion of SBC DIC offset when we created the special survivor indemnity allowance by finding a small amount of mandatory dollars to provide an additional stipend to those receiving that benefit. And unfortunately, the mandatory offsets required to address this issue have become extremely difficult to find now, especially in the amounts required. And of course, we look to you to help us do that as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts today on any solutions that you may have to help us address the offset so we can finally make some positive change. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I now ask unanimous consent that the following testimony be entered into the record from the American Military Retirees Association, Major General James E. Livingston, United States Marine Corps, retired, National Association for Uniformed Services, National Military Family Association, National Military Veterans Alliance, Kathy M. Prout, Gold Star Surviving Spouse, the Retired Enlisted Association, Edith Smith, Society of Military Widows, Janet Snyder, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, Dr. Vivianne Wursel, Gold Star Surviving Spouse, and that Representative Joe Wilson of South Carolina, former chairman of this subcommittee, be allowed to participate and read his statement for the record. Without objection so ordered, I will now recognize Mr. Wilson for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership for military families by holding this important hearing today on the concurrent receipt of Survivor Benefit Plan SBP and Dependency Indemnity Compensation DIC. I am grateful for your recognition of this problem and your efforts in correcting it, which is bipartisan as confirmed by the co-sponsorship of this legislation by Ranking Member Susan Davis. I would also like to thank the organizations testifying before the subcommittee today for their dedication to this critical issue. Gold Star Wives of America, Military Officers Association of America, Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, and the Non-Commissioned Officers Association of the United States. Additionally, I was really grateful to hear about a letter of support from General James Livingston of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, a distinguished recipient of the Medal of Honor and a real champion for military families. Without their efforts, this issue would not have made the progress that we've had. As you know, we've been working on this situation for several years, and currently in the 114th Congress, we have over 170 co-sponsors of H.R. 1594, the Military Survivor Spouses Equity Act, which originally was a cause of my predecessor, the late Armed Services Committee Chairman Floyd Spence. This bill would end the clearly identified widow's tax, or the dollar-for-dollar offset of payments between the Survivor Benefit Plan and Dependency Indemnity Compensation Program. Currently, surviving spouses' Survivor Benefit Plan payments are offset dollar for dollar, either partially or totally, as a result of receiving dependency and indemnity compensation. The offset wipes out most of or all of the SBP entitlement and affects over 60,000 widows and widowers. The substitution of the dependency and indemnity compensation for Survivor Benefit Plan payments is clearly unjust. The spouses of military service members are owed a debt of gratitude and appreciation. These spouses provide the support and strength to our men and women in uniform when they secure our freedom at home and abroad. As a military spouse, they too devote their lives to serving our country. Military families make necessary arrangements for their spouses to be taken care of in the event of their death. We owe it to these fallen heroes to carry out their wishes and ensure their expectations are fully met. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge two individuals that have been extremely important to me, Maggie McLeod and Edie Smith. Maggie previously testified before this subcommittee regarding this exact issue and continues to advocate for a correction. Her husband served as a military fellow in the office that I hold before he tragically lost his life in Iraq. I will always treasure the service of Lieutenant Colonel Drain McLeod for America. It is through her unwavering advocacy that I became involved in this issue and hope that today we can finally come to a resolution. Additionally, Edie, who is just effervescent in her support, continues to work hard of educating members about the Military Surviving Spouses Equity Act and has been a fantastic resource for a number of members in their offices. Thank you for your dedication and tireless efforts, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We are joined again today by an outstanding panel. We'll give each witness the opportunity to make opening comments and each member an opportunity to question the witnesses. I respectfully ask the witnesses to summarize to the greatest extent possible the high points of your written testimony in no more than 5 minutes. Your complete written statements will be entered into the hearing record. As a reminder, the lights in front of you will turn yellow when you have 1 minute remaining and red when your time is concluded. And this would not be a military personnel subcommittee meeting if we did not have votes scheduled to interrupt the committee meeting at some point. So please bear with us when the bell rings. We'll run over and vote and then come on back to finish up. We are joined today by Ms. Chris Kennard, Co-Chair, Government Relations Committee, Gold Star Wives of America. Mr. Stephen Stowbridge, Colonel, United States Air Force, retired, Director, Government Relations of the Military Officers Association of America. Mr. John Ostrowski, Senior Chief, United States Coast Guard Reserve, retired, Director of Government Affairs of the Non-Commissioned Officers Association of the United States. And Mr. Joe Davis, Director of Public Affairs, the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States. With that, I will recognize Ms. Kennard for 5 minutes.
I have to push the button. Okay. Like I'm a what? A rock star? Never been a rock star. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Chairman Heck and Ranking Member Davis and everybody else that is here with allowing the Gold Star Wives to testify before this committee. I've been going with Reeves Across America. It's been late nights and a lot of interesting, emotional things. So I just want to bring the testimony to you. You have my oral or my written testimony. There's a couple of things that did a typo in going through it, but I just want to give some examples that maybe that would make it a little bit more personal to you, that this really does affect, in a heavy-duty way, our surviving spouses and our military families, and we need to do something about it. The first thing is, talked a little bit about the DIC, but getting down to the actual surviving spouses benefit program, there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of offset. You get the offset, and then if you have children, you're told, first of all, you have the shock that your husband has been killed or passed away, or you found them committing suicide. And then the next thing that you have is, okay, you have children, you can get SBP and DIC, only full benefits if you relinquish to your children everything. But no, you don't always get told that at age 18, not 16. It was 16 when I'm a Vietnam War widow. My son was 16 when we lost his benefits, but now it's 18. When you lose the benefits at 18 years old, then for instance, I have a lady from Texas, and she has 4 children, and she found her husband. He had committed suicide, and she was the one that found him. Then she went through this process and turned everything over to her children. Each year, her money goes down as her children become older. She has 2 master's degrees and is not working at the time, raising 4 children, a single parent, and therefore, at the end of the time, she'll probably be 20 years out, be 48 years old with no experience, and even though she has the degrees, who's going to hire her? And as her money started out at $2,200, it'll be down to $900 when she finally has her last child turn 18. So that's one example, and that needs to be changed to the 18. It's just, there's another part where, you know, Congress did recognize the fact that there was some problems, and the offset is not fair because the men will deploy and they think that they're providing for their family, but it also depends on rank and age, or not age, but time in service. And when your military are young, which most of them are young, that don't survive, they're the ones out on the field, then their offset is maybe 100%. So and a lot of times they don't realize that the wife or the widow would get the DIC. So they may think they're going to get more than what they actually get. So what happens then when you figure it out, I think a lot of times you get the SBB first, and then all of a sudden you get the DIC, and it's like, the SBB is out the window, which is a little devastating because you're thinking you're going to get $2,500 and you're only going to get $1,200. And at this point in time, DIC is only $1,254. How many people in this country could live on $1,254 a month? And for our military widows to survive on that is horrible, just horrible. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I have a lady there that was from Vietnam, and she's living in her car. She has nowhere to go, nowhere to go. Then to go on to the SSI, that, again, I made a typo. It's supposed to be 2017, not 2016. But the last thing is, the only way that a widow can really get her DIC or her SBB full benefits and DIC full benefits is to remarry after 57. However, if she got a premiums paid, then she's got to pay it back. A lady in Florida had remarried and had to pay $41,000 back after 20 years. Shock. My time is up. Do you have any questions? Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Kennard. Colonel Strobridge?
Chairman Heck, Ranking Member Davis, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, and Congressman Wilson, we're grateful for your calling this hearing and for championing the cause of SBP DIC widows. This committee's leadership efforts are the sole reason there's been even partial progress toward eliminating the unfair deduction of DIC from SBP. In establishing the Special Survivor Indemnity Allowance for SBP DIC widows in 2008, and then in 2009 by establishing a schedule of annual SSIA increases through 2017, you gave hope to thousands of survivors that Congress was finally taking action on their cause. The stark reality of their situation and the reason why the deduction is so wrong was stated best in the August 2009 Federal Court of Appeals ruling in Sharp versus the United States, which required payment of both SBP and DIC to certain dual-eligible survivors. After all, the ruling stated the service member paid for both benefits, SBP with premiums, DIC with his life. But that narrow case applied only to SBP DIC survivors who remarry after age 57, as we just heard from Ms. Kennard. Ironically, it highlighted the inequity even more starkly. The law has always penalized survivors who remarry before age 55 for SBP and 57 for DIC by stopping their payments. Since Sharp versus United States, the law now also imposes a financial penalty by continuing the offset for survivors who choose not to remarry after age 57. So it's kind of like they got you coming and going. The ideal solution would be to eliminate the offset for all SBP DIC survivors. Because of budget issues, our hope has been that Congress would do that on a phased basis by steadily increasing the SSIA amounts over time. As of FY17, the $310 monthly SSIA will restore about 25% of the offset. But there's a very near problem, as the statutory authority to pay the SSIA will expire on October 1st, 2017. As a minimum, Congress needs to extend the SSIA in the FY17 Defense Authorization Act, or SBP widows will be made to forfeit the $310 monthly allowance this committee worked so hard to win for them. We are sensitive to the mandatory spending challenge. But we have to recognize that on 2 prior occasions, the committee managed to convince House and Senate leaders to use outside offsets to fund the SSIA. And when leadership recently managed to find far larger offsets to provide Medicare premium relief to millions of wealthier beneficiaries, it's hard to explain to SBP DIC widows who've suffered 5-digit annual losses for decades why their situation should have a lower priority. Our hope is that their immediate plight is urgent enough to warrant similar leadership involvement to find a way to extend the SSIA authority and make some further progress on phasing out the offset. In closing, I want to highlight one further inequity affecting survivors of Guard and Reserve members who die on inactive duty for training. Their survivor benefits are calculated with a reduced formula compared to members who die on active duty. Their lower SBP amounts are typically wiped out by the offset. The coalition believes strongly that their SBP formula should be the same as for active duty deaths. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. Thank you for the opportunity to present them.
Thanks, Colonel. Senior Chief?
Chairman Heck, Ranking Member Davis, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the Non-Commissioned Officers Association and its nearly 80,000 members, we are grateful to the committee for the opportunity to express our views concerning SBP. NCOA recognizes all who serve in Congress or in uniformed service who swear an oath of office, enlistment, or commissioning in which the following affirmation is sacredly promised: to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. NCOA remains cognizant, as you must also, that the military enlistment or commissioning, the significance of those words bear the possibility of extreme sacrifice and even death. NCOA understands that a national debt in excess of $18 trillion impacts all citizens, including military members, veterans, and their family members. There is real concern across the nation relative to the resolution of this national debt. Many military members, disabled veterans, and veterans feel that they will become disenfranchised from their health care programs and promised benefits as a result of being forced to bear the brunt of cost savings plans. Simply stated, don't make our veterans pay double for this debt. Do not put the burden of balancing the budget on the backs of veterans and their survivors. We say, however, that this debt was not caused by the nation's approximately 0.0016% of the population whose loved ones served in the armed forces and whose personal sacrifice ensured the freedoms enjoyed by all Americans. The NCOA believes strongly that current law is unjust in reducing military SBP annuities by the amount of any survivor benefits payable for the VA DIC program. The NCOA believes strongly that SBP and DIC payments are paid for different reasons, just as military retired pay and VA disability compensation compensates for different reasons. SBP is insurance purchased by the retiree from his or her employer, the DoD, and is intended to preserve a portion of service-earned retired pay for the survivor upon the retiree's death for any reason. DIC is a special indemnity compensation paid to the survivor by the VA when a member's service has caused his or her premature death. In such cases, the VA indemnity compensation should be added to the SBP annuity for the retiree survivor, not substituted for it. NCOA would like to also state that this offset affects the enlisted members the most. The reality is that in every SBP DIC case, active duty or retired, the true premium extracted by the service from both a member and the survivor was the ultimate one, the very life of the member. NCOA is grateful to the subcommittee for its significant efforts in past years to improve the survivor benefits plan, and we thank you for that. Undoubtedly, the best solution is to eliminate the SBP DIC offset. This is the right thing to do. We know that each of you on the subcommittee and in Congress is compassionate about this goal. In closing, I would like to share a quote by George Washington. "The willingness with which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive veterans of earlier wars were treated and appreciated by our nation." Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony. I am prepared to take any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Davis, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to share the collective voice of 1.7 million members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars and our auxiliaries. For the sake of brevity, I will not repeat in depth what's already been said, but it cannot be overstated that the Survivor Benefit Plan is a DoD insurance program paid by military retirees. The Dependency and Indemnity compensation is a VA benefit meant to compensate a family for losing a loved one whose premature death was a direct result of their military service. It is a long-time VFW goal to eliminate this dollar-for-dollar offset that exists only to save the government money, which is perhaps the ultimate insult our government can inflict on surviving military families, on their spouses, because the two payments are mutually exclusive and paid for two different reasons from two different federal agencies. Earlier this year, the Military Compensation and Retirement Modernization Commission recommended a new SBP program with a substantially higher monthly premium in order to receive a full DIC without offset. The VFW concurs with the Commission's ultimate goal to eliminate the offset, but we disagree with its funding method. We want a full repeal of the offset, not to subsidize it out of the pockets of military retirees who are already required to relinquish up to 6.5% of their monthly pay for 30 consecutive years, just to ensure that their surviving spouse will receive 55% of their retirement pay. Mr. Chairman, the way things are done must be changed. I am not a Gold Star family member, but I, and hopefully the rest of America, do believe in the fundamental rule of fairness. There is nothing fair about financially penalizing widows and widowers. Let there be no doubt that the VFW stands with the Gold Star wives everywhere to eliminate this terrible penalty. We are painfully aware that the federal government's resources are very finite and that sequestration is still the law of the land. But our nation's first priority, is to defend the homeland. And our second priority must be able to defend those who do defend, regardless of whether they serve 4 years or 40. The VFW has long maintained that if our nation cannot afford to take care of veterans, then we should quit creating them. Our military has answered every call and met every challenge. Now it's Congress's turn. We salute Congressman Joe Wilson of South Carolina for once again reintroducing legislation to end the offset. It is our hope that today's hearing will provide the necessary momentum to propel H.R. 1594 forward. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here this afternoon and to present your perspective or the perspective of your agencies. And I also want to thank everyone else who's taken the time, all the Gold Star wives present, for taking the time to be here, and my favorite Gold Star wife, Janet Snyder, from Nevada, for taking the time to travel out here. I can tell you the organization has no stronger advocate than Janet Snyder, who is on a first-name basis with everybody in my office. She calls so often. You know, Mr. Davis, you addressed the question that I was going to bring up, which was the Mickermix recommendation. I'd like to get the answer from the other three members. So the Military Compensation and Retirement Modernization Commission, also known as the Mickermick in these circles, made the recommendation that if total repeal of the offset was not possible, to charge a higher premium on the SBP to allow somebody to get both full benefits out of both. Understanding that that is not the desired outcome for probably everybody in this room, just as a potential intermediate step or as a step forward, is that something that your organization would embrace? Ms. Kennard?
I'm going to say, not really. Our widows are, in the past, you know, we're already there, we're already suffering. So for the premiums to be higher, that's not really going to do anything for us. We need to have an offset repealed or adjusted so that by the future, as they were trying to do with the SSIA, to try to eliminate the offset, that's where we want to go.
Okay. Colonel?
Yes, sir. We would agree. To us, that is no solution at all. Number one, as she said, it doesn't do anything for the current survivors, but even for the future survivors. To me, that's worse than the current situation because it, A, gives up on the government owing any obligation. It makes the member fund it completely. Not only that, but it puts the member in the decision of trying to guess whether he or she might die of a service-connected cause and pay the full price up front, whether or not that's going to happen. And most people wouldn't be willing to do that. So to us, it wouldn't solve a thing.
Okay, thanks. Senior Chief?
Mr. Chairman, NCOA absolutely does not support the Mickermick solution. We do believe to eliminate the offset completely. It's unfortunate that we are in the budget situation we are in and looking for outside-the-box solutions. But in this case, this needs to be eliminated completely. They're separate pots of money, and they were earned for separate reasons, and we don't want to have another bandage.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Davis, you answered in your, do you want to expand on the previous statement you made?
We don't support it, sir. We don't believe in offsetting.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your being so articulate and I think making what has always been a very strong case, and you did a very good job of that. You know, I remember a number of years ago, my veterans reminding me that in many ways we became a military at war and not a nation at war. I think we all need to take responsibility and to do that in a number of ways, and part of it is in the way that we make sure that all of this is funded properly and that we are able to repeal the SBC DIC, and I agree with that. I wondered, Ms. Kennard, if you had suggested, because we're looking at $7 billion essentially for this, and at the same time, you've all spoken in some ways of perhaps some interim, perhaps phasing, et cetera, and that's been looked at in the past as well. But Ms. Kennard, you've raised the issue in terms of children and young people who are 18 and younger. What would you do with that? Where do you think that those lines should be drawn, and how would you suggest that?
Well, first of all, when you first learn of your husband's fate, you're in shock. And for a widow to have to decide, shall I give the money to my children or in myself, to get the full benefit, to give it to the children, and not being told, or if you're told you don't remember anything in the first year anyway, that you're going to lose and never be able to regroup that SBB at the end of when the last child reaches 18. So once you're getting the SBB for the children, the full benefit. By the time the last child turns 18, you don't get any benefit at all. You just get the DIC. So it needs to be given to the widow, and she's the one that's responsible for it. Plus the fact that the children are having to pay taxes, which, the widow is going to have to, but every year you get a little note saying, is your 1.5-year-old remarried? Things that are just bizarre. So I would say that we want to have it just go to the widow.
Just go to the widow.
There shouldn't be a choice, because you're not in a place to make that choice at that time.
Others, do you have thoughts about that as well?
I think what we've felt, one option is an inequity of the current situation, like Ms. Kennard said, is that it goes away. Well, one of the options we've supported is saying when the children are gone, it should revert to the survivor.
We concur. Nancy concurs with Gold Star Wives. Nothing further, really.
Okay. Mr. Davis. All right. Thank you very much. And in terms of the number of spouses subject to the SBP's DIC, do you think that that's going to increase dramatically, that number? Or are we looking at, does anybody have a sense of that?
I could answer that for you. I'm a widow from Vietnam, and believe me, after that, what I went through, I was 7 months pregnant with my son. My husband was 20 years old. I didn't want anybody to have to go through what I went through. And when we started going to war again and again and again, and all these women back here who have suffered the same thing, and each one has a different story. I just told you 2 little ones. Yeah. It's going to happen unless we learn to not go to war. And until we learn that war is not just the military part going to war, but it's paying for our veterans when they come home, our widows, our widowers, our children. Like Abraham Lincoln said, it's time to heal the country and take care of the widows and the orphans, and we're not doing that.
Right. That's all part of it.
It's all part of it, and we don't consider that in the big budget. DOD says, oh, we're going to spend this money on war. Why are they taking our widows' money away? It's wrong. It's just wrong. It wouldn't happen in the civilian world. Just wouldn't.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking each of you for your testimony today and your advocacy. And the only thing I can read into the lighter than desired attendance by my colleagues on the committee is that you have the support because you've been so effective outside of this hearing in our offices, as our chairman has said. I'd like to thank Mrs. Costello, who has worked with our office to ensure that we make the right decision on this bill. We sponsored it. We were a co-sponsor last session of Congress. We will this session again. But the argument that you've made, in my opinion, is incontrovertible. And you've made it on its merits, on the facts. You've also appealed to, I think, our more important sensibilities, the moral dimension of this, of what we ask of our service members, and then ensuring that we fulfill our end of the obligation. Mr. Davis, I serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee as well for the last 3 years, and you eloquently and efficiently put it, if we cannot afford to take care of our veterans and their spouses and their dependents, then we cannot afford to go to war. And I think if we entered these factors into our calculations when we went to war, perhaps put an escrow percentage of what it costs for every billion we put into Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, and we have U.S. Armed Forces stationed in over 150 countries around the world. If some percentage was put away for that veteran, his or her spouse, their dependents, I think we would do a better job, and we would make that connection that is so obvious to us, especially when you say it the way you did, Mr. Davis, but make that connection in law so that we don't have these problems in the VA, in having you have to come to our offices, testify before us to do something that makes only the most common sense to any American listening to you. So I want to thank Mr. Wilson in his absence for, again, introducing this, for the chairman and ranking member for holding this committee, for your tireless advocacy, which brings this issue to home for us in a very personal, very compelling, and I hope very effective way. So that we make the fix in law that's necessary, that it's fixed in perpetuity, so that you're not coming back here to advocate for this. There are certainly no end of problems that you could come back here to remind us of or help us fix. Let's use your amazing talents on those. This one we should dispense with after this year, and I really hope that we do. So I don't have any questions because you've answered them for us. I just want to thank everyone who is here, and especially the Costello family for their service to my community, to our country, and to all surviving spouses and dependents going forward. It's that personal advocacy that's making a difference. So with that, I yield back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of you for being here today. My late father was a career soldier, and I'm retired military. And I think one of the toughest things I do as a member of Congress is when soldier, airman, sailor, or Marine has died, whether it be from a training accident or in combat itself. I spend time with those families, and it's always something that's very difficult to do, and every family mourns in their own way the loss of their loved one. And so I don't think this country appreciates enough those who serve our nation in uniform and make tremendous sacrifices on behalf of our freedom. So I just want to thank you and the service and the sacrifice of your families. And thank you for being here today. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Ms. Davis, any other questions? Okay. Well, that was the vote bell, so it seems like timing was somewhat fortuitous. Look, again, we want to thank all of those who took the time to travel here to present your testimony. As Mr. O'Rourke did, I think Chairman Wilson has been the champion on this issue, at least since I've been in Congress. I look forward to working with him as well as the rest of the subcommittee and the full committee as we try to move forward with a solution to this issue that doesn't, as Mr. O'Rourke said, require you to come back time and time again. So again, thank you all for your service and sacrifice to our nation and for taking the time to be here, and this hearing will be adjourned.
Bye.